Okay, welcome everybody. Thank you guys for the second annual second essay essentials we are presenting today. We had the first session this past week on Thursday or Wednesday, sorry, my apologies, and it went extremely well. And so we're doing another session for you today, essay essentials hosted today about college applications and scholarship essays and personal statements. Welcome to College Depot. This is our first ever virtual summer sessions, and so we're so excited for you to be here today. So you will learn, like as I mentioned, all about college applications with scholarship essays and personal statements. If you have any questions throughout this presentation, please send them in the chat to all panelists or all participants, and we will go ahead and read them to you. And so I would like to introduce to you Meryl Stewart and Diana Matera. They are both going to present to you about the essay essentials, as I mentioned. And so take it away, Meryl.
Hi, everybody. My name is Meryl Stewart, and today, first of all, thank you for joining us on a Saturday afternoon to talk about essay essentials. And so you're obviously here to find out why the essay is such an important part of the application process for college applications as well as scholarship applications. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that. So first of all, think of it in terms of the fact that you're most likely not going to have an opportunity to have a face-to-face or an in-person interview with any of these reviewers or committees. So this is your chance to speak directly to an admissions or scholarship committee. Because you won't get that in-person interview, you want to think as you're writing the essay, you really want to think in terms of that this is sort of taking place as an in-person interview. It's allowing you to get to the reviewers to get to know who you are. So you're going to be starting by telling your story. It's an opportunity to assign meaning to different events in your life. The event itself doesn't have to be important. That's really something to keep in mind as you're thinking about what you want to write about. The event doesn't have to be important. It's really what you have to say about that event. So think of it as, how did that experience change you? What did you learn from that experience? Or how did you grow from that experience? How will the experience continue to influence you as you move forward with college and other education? So the stories shared in the essay are also what the admissions officers are going to use to advocate for the students, because that's how they get to know you. So portraying your personality. So your essay reveals something really important about you that grades and test scores can't do, and that's your personality. So grades and test scores are wonderful, and the reviewers have that on the application, but those are just sort of cold facts on a page. Writing the essay allows you to show them your personality and who you are as a person. And finally, you can demonstrate writing and critical thinking skills. So it allows you to showcase some of the things that you've learned in school and your writing style and things like that. So it's really important to take your time, and you're going to hear that throughout, and prepare your essay, and also to have other people proofread it. You're also going to hear us repeat this as well. So having a family member, a teacher, and then that's actually also something, a service that we provide at College Depot. You can give us a call and make an appointment. Our phone number's on the website, and you can make an appointment, and we'll actually be more than happy to review essays with you. Just the key thing to keep in mind is it's always best if you allow enough time before an application is due. It's a much better experience for the student as well as the reviewer, because we can give you feedback. You can make some edits to your essay, and then we can work towards a final really great essay for you to turn in. So this slide is showing some scholarship essay question examples. These are also, you could see these for colleges as well. I'm going to just read off the first several ones to give you an idea of the types of questions you might see. So number one is, how will your study of blank contribute to your immediate or long-range career plans? Number two is, describe how you have demonstrated leadership ability both in and out of school. Number 3, describe your most meaningful achievements and how they relate to your field of study and your future goals. And number 4, why are you a good candidate to receive this award? And you'll notice even just those first couple examples, the different type of questions. Some are more specific, for example, about your field of study. And so you're going to be answering the prompt or the question, focusing on your field of study. Another one, like number 4, is why are you a good candidate to receive this award? This is a very broad question, which you could take in multiple different ways. So that's just a good idea to have some of these examples to get you thinking about what you might be seeing. Just try when you're looking at these questions, remember that the reviewers want to get to know you. So as you're answering the questions, that's what you want to be thinking about. Also, to let you know, on the College Depot website, which is off of the Phoenix Public Library website, we actually have a long list of scholarship applications, and you can go there if you want additional essay question examples. So preparing yourself. So this, first and foremost, is really important, and I congratulate you because you are already starting the process, because the fact that you're here today on a Saturday, you're actually here to prepare yourself and write a wonderful essay. So that's a great start. But the key is to begin writing early. So you want to write several essays based on common essay prompts to practice, and doing this will allow you to not have to start from scratch every time you do a new application. So you can have several outlines based on sort of some of the standard questions, and then you won't have to start each time you're filling out a new scholarship application. And writing those early, you're going to have them already available to you. And also, you just don't want to wait till the last minute. It's the same thing if you're studying for a test, but reviewers are going to really notice if you wait. If you have an application due tomorrow and you start writing it at midnight and you write the essay, you might turn it in on time, but it's going to be very noticeable that it was a very last minute essay. So you just want to start early, and it's going to make everything better for you. Practice honing your writing skills. By starting early and doing some of these example questions, you're going to get better and better at this type of writing, because some of you might not have done this style of writing. It's going to be possibly a little bit different than what you're used to from school. And then think about how you want to present yourself. Again, we are all complex people. You're complex. So you need to decide what you want to highlight about yourself for each of the applications. And you're going to be able to understand that from some of the questions as well. But for example, one committee or reviewer might be really interested in to hear about adversities that you've overcome, while another might be more interested in your intellectual curiosity or some of your career goals, which we saw in the slide with the example questions about what are you going to be studying. So you need to figure out how you want to present yourself, and then also what they're looking for in those questions. Now, doing your research, this is also a really important part of the process. Research the college or scholarship organization that you are applying to, and then make sure to cater your essay accordingly. Reviewers are going to also definitely notice if you know nothing about the scholarship organization or the university that you're applying to. It's always very apparent when you're writing an essay and reading it that if you did not do any research. A great place to start is looking at their mission statement, where you can find right on the organization's website, and as well as the college website, because this is going to tell you if you're a good fit for that university or organization. And then also think about your qualifications, and why are you qualified specifically for this scholarship or to attend a specific university? How do your qualifications match up with what they're looking for? Let me see, I think we have one question before I move forward. Let's see. How can I tell a fifth grader it is important to know? So I assume you might be saying, like, you want to know that, to let the fifth grader know that it's important to start writing early and practicing. And that, I mean, being a fifth grader, you're really ahead of the game. You're starting early. But if you want them to start early like that, it's going to only make them better. If they're practicing writing essays, again, we have the examples that I mentioned on the College Depot website you can look at, and you can start practicing and making some outlines. So great question. So now we're going to talk about knowing your readers. And this is also something you want to be thinking about as you're answering the questions. So understanding their mission, we mentioned that before, researching what their mission is. Why is this particular organization offering a scholarship? What are their organizational goals? This is going to be really helpful as you write your essay to know those things. Going to the website, many of the scholarship organizations actually have bios and essays of past winners on there. And this is a great way to find out what those organizations are actually looking for in a scholarship recipient. So I highly recommend going that route and doing some of that research. Analyzing the prompt. So I can't stress this enough because there's obviously a lot to think about while you're answering the prompt or question. But you really want to try and come back to it because it's very easy to sort of go off on a tangent while you're writing, and you want to make sure you're answering that. And it's your job to decide what you want to emphasize as you're answering those questions, and also to read between the lines and figure out what they're looking for. And finally, asking questions. Admissions offices as well as scholarship organizations are very happy to talk to students if you're not sure if you're eligible for something, or if you don't know if you want to apply to a certain college. Just pick up the phone and ask, and let them know that you have some questions, and they're going to be really happy to answer them as long as you're polite about it. So narrative essay writing is about telling a story. So again, I mentioned before, some of you might not have done this type of essay writing before. It can be different than the typical school essay that you're writing. It's very much you telling a story about something which contributed for you becoming the person that you are. It's a different style, as I mentioned before, and practicing, we're going back to the practicing, that really is going to help you get used to this type of writing. You're going to be writing about personal experiences. So again, remember that the reviewer wants to get to know you and who you are. This style of writing uses descriptive, exciting, and very active words. The goal while you're writing this essay is to engage your reader. They read so many of these essays. I can't emphasize that enough. You want to be the essay that sticks out, of course. So by using vivid details and imagery and using those exciting and active words, you will stick out and you will engage your reader. And also coming back to what I mentioned before, that the topic itself or the event doesn't have to be something exciting. It's how you write about it, and that's what makes the experience come to life for the reviewer. An example of this is I read a wonderful essay about a girl who did not like having family dinners. Her whole essay topic was about family dinners and how it was an obligation that she had to do every single week. And that's a very simple thing. All of us have family dinners. But what she did is she talked about how in the beginning it was an obligation, and then it was a really engaging essay and story, because then she talked about it at the end about how each family member brought something different to the literal table at family dinners, and then how much she was going to miss these family dinners once she went off to college. So again, it's not what the experience, it doesn't have to be something super exciting, but it's how the experience or event shaped you. Content is important. So we want to be striving for depth rather than breadth. So narrow your focus to one or two major themes rather than trying to cover too much. You obviously have lived a long time, and so when you're answering these questions, your inclination might be to just put everything in there about your life. You really don't want to do that because, first of all, you want to stay aware of the reader's attention span. Again, they're reading a lot of these essays, so you want to make sure that you focus on those major themes. Also, you want to pay attention to what the question is and make sure you're answering it, and then the word limit. And there always are specific word limits. And what you can do with that is, if you're using Word on the lower left-hand corner, usually there's a counter and you can keep track of how many words your essay is. And you don't want to go way under, and you definitely don't want to go way over that word limit. So again, by trying to focus on those major themes, also keep in mind that the word limit and what the prompt is. And you don't want to just state, you want to demonstrate, as again, you're engaging the reader. So rather than telling the reader that you value volunteering in the community, you want to illustrate that concept with a specific story where you were a volunteer. And I have a personal example. When I was your age, I worked in a children's hospital, and it was a terrifying experience. And I've written an essay about this, where I did not want to go to the hospital. I didn't want to volunteer. But then once I got there and got to know some of the patients and developed relationships with them, it was one of the greatest experience I've ever had volunteering, and also how it matured me and how I changed from it. So that's an example of, like, not just saying, oh, I volunteered and I liked it. It's a specific story about where you started and then where you ended up. And just remember to elaborate on those important parts of the essay and keep those major themes as well. And then walk the reader through your experience. You want to use descriptive words. As I mentioned before, those vivid, engaging, or even emotional words to keep them engaged. And so now I actually want to ask the group we're going to do a little exercise to get you thinking about what you are going to be thinking about when you're writing an essay. So if you can type in the chat box one word that describes yourself. And we'll see some of the examples. Anybody have, let's see. So just one word that you can think of that might describe yourself. I'll give you a moment. Okay, let's see. We've got sporadic, expert. That's good. Perseverance, dedicated, determined, creative, fantastic. Those are all great words. So, and this is, again, just sort of some of the brainstorming that you're going to be doing as you're writing these essays. This is a very simple exercise where you're just thinking of one word, but this is going to actually be helpful to you as you're writing your essays. So great job. And are there any other questions before I turn it over to Diana?
Meryl, there are a few questions. So Faith is asking, how often should you practice writing the essays?
Well, I mean, there's not a set time. It really depends on how soon, what grade you're in, and if you're actually applying for a scholarship that's, in the next few months. What I mentioned is, start preparing and starting early. So if you want it, there's not like a set time to practice. What I would recommend is, going to our website and get some of those scholarship applications and look at the essay questions and write some of those essays out. So then you're going to have the outline available to you, and that's going to allow you to practice. But there's not really a set, that'll be determined on when you are filling out the applications and when you have an essay due.
Okay, and then Afi is asking, how can I tell my third graders about this? Can you send samples and please share the links so I can share with my kids?
Well, that again, so a third grader, that's being very proactive. That's being very proactive. But what you can do, as I mentioned before, is if you go to the Phoenix Public Library website, again, we have a lot of essay examples, which will be linked in those scholarship essay applications. So you can go in there and see a lot of those questions, and then you can just do some practicing as well.
Okay.
I have a little advice also. This is Diana. An elementary school student obviously has fewer experiences to draw from in writing an essay than a high schooler. So this is kind of an unusual question for us at the Depot because we don't usually see students this young. But my recommendation for starting early in elementary school is to have your students just write about what they see and what they feel and what their environment looks like so that they get used to using interesting words and describing things rather than just saying, well, there was a tree outside. So there are ways that you can make this happen for elementary students. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of examples of that, but I'd be happy to work with a teacher who was interested in giving students an assignment at that early age to really start them thinking about how to use powerful words and how to demonstrate things rather than just stating them.
Okay, thank you. That's great because Afi is asking this question.
Another question, Megan?
No, I was saying Afi was asking those questions, how he can help his kids in elementary school. So those
Okay.
are great answers. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll turn it over about boring your readers. We'll turn it over to Diana. Take it away, Diana.
Thank you, Megan. Thank you, Meryl, for that information. Again, my name is Diana Mateer. I'm an advisor at the College Depot, and I'm also the primary essay reader there. As Meryl mentioned, we do a lot of our free services in the area of essay review. So I have students who send me an essay every few days or every few weeks. We give them honest and objective feedback on both grammar and content. So we do just about everything about advising people other than writing the actual essay. If I had one piece of advice for you today to take away from this session, it would be this: don't bore me. Don't bore your readers. You'll see this gentleman with his head in his hand here saying, I only have 1,000 more essays to review before lunch. Well, that is somewhat of an exaggeration, but quite honestly, college admissions officers and scholarship committee members really do look at so many applications a day that they tell me that they see an application, and I do this myself, every 10 to 15 minutes, they're looking at a new person. So you don't want to begin your essay with something very routine, like my name is Diana Mateer, I want to be a chemical engineer, when you could start with a much more powerful hook that we'll talk about in a few moments that will draw me in and make me want to read the rest of the essay. So although this gentleman has a big job, 1,000 essays before lunch, make sure yours is the one he really remembers. I really can't emphasize enough to be yourself and to be positive in your writing. Being yourself means being original and bringing the essay to life. Meryl mentioned that sometimes students will say, we have absolutely nothing to talk about. We're not interesting. My friend is interesting. He's had lots of things happen to him, but I'm just a boring average person. Well, we are about to show you an essay that was written last month in a week-long workshop conducted by Phoenix Union High School, in which a student took a fairly ordinary event and assigned a very, very important meaning to it. So the event itself doesn't have to be the because some of us have had pretty average life experiences. But out of those experiences, we've learned something very valuable, and that is the important thing that you have to emphasize. So even the mundane can be turned into a really important life lesson. You have to be positive too. Sometimes essays will ask you to talk about adversity or talk about challenges or talk about what you don't like in this world. And the fact is, you can turn that into a pretty negative essay pretty quickly. But what I advise you instead to do is try to emphasize what positive came out of it, because hopefully those times of adversity and challenge, something has come out of it that we can take away and learn from. In particular, I try to emphasize that you should not necessarily write about academic challenges. And I'll give you an example. If you were a horrible student in the ninth grade and you now have figured out what your issues were and you've become a good student, there is probably a point in the application, not in the essay, but in the application itself, that will allow you to write some notes explaining your circumstances. So you don't have to devote an entire essay to it, but you can take the opportunity to write some notes, let the scholarship committee or the admissions committee know that you recognize that maybe ninth grade wasn't the most successful grade for you, but that you have since progressed from that point. It's probably a better option than writing an entire essay about your failure in the ninth grade, unless there was a huge takeaway from it that changed your mind in the next 3 grades. Let's talk for a few moments about what really grabs me in an essay, and that is the introductions. An unusual first paragraph, a unique introductory statement will get me every time. And I wanted to share a few of them that have come from our friends at Stanford University. These were actual essay introductions, and I have some takeaways from this first sentence and how my imagination ran away with me when I read these sentences. Let's start with change my name each time I place an order at Starbucks. Perhaps the student is an aspiring actor and they're trying out different roles every time they order a cup of coffee. Little unusual, but again, perhaps that's an introduction to what that student wants their career goal to be. Maybe the student says, I have old hands. And maybe that individual has a disease like juvenile arthritis. That's a childhood form of a disease that's typically reserved for their grandparents. But obviously, they've had some unique experiences in meeting the challenges of that disease. So that's a great way to introduce a topic. I have old hands. What about this one? I had never seen anyone get so excited about mitochondria. Did that student have a ninth grade science teacher who was so inspirational and passionate about the subject that they decided to become a cell biologist or a medical doctor? That's a great way of introducing that interest and that passion without simply saying, I really like my ninth grade science teacher and I learned so much I want to be one myself. And then finally, when I was in the 8th grade, I couldn't read. Keep in mind, this was a Stanford application, and you better believe I want to know more about this one because I want to know about the challenge that this student faced going all the way up to 8th grade without the inability to read. And I most definitely want to know how that challenge was overcome to bring a student to where he or she is today. So you're getting an idea of introductions that really are powerful. I advise students to stay away if you can't really fit it into the essay. Don't start with a quote or don't start with a cliche, and we'll see that in a moment, unless you can really back it up. Because quotes or cliche statements, things we hear all the time, are not good unless they fit perfectly in what we're going to be talking about. And you're about to see one that does fit perfectly. I want to talk about word count for a moment. Word count is very important because you don't want to go over the word count because that means you don't know how to follow the rules. At least that's what some readers will think. But you want every word to count. So if the word count is 750 words, you really don't want 751, but you don't want 451 either. That doesn't mean you have to make sure you are at 750 words on the button, but you need to get relatively close. You want to use strong verbs. You want your words to be empowered so that everyone makes a difference. And I want you to take a moment and look at this very simple picture. This is a cat and a mouse. Obviously, they're not generally the best of friends. And we have 4 sentences here. Certainly not the start of the essay, but describing the picture that you see. So I'm going to read them all to you, and I'm going to ask you to vote for the one you find most powerful, 1, 2, 3, or 4. And if you do it out on the chat, please, I'd appreciate it. So let's begin. Number 1, my cat ran across the field and caught a mouse. Pretty obvious. Ran, caught. That's what cats and mice do to each other, right? My cat quickly ran across the field and skillfully caught a mouse. That's number 2. Number 3, my cat darted across the field and pounced on a mouse. And then number 4, a mouse was fiercely captured by my cat, who ran at a very quick rate across the field. And now I will ask if you would vote, please, for which one you think has the most powerful statement to describe this picture. And Megan, I'll ask you to tell me how the votes are. I can see some of them, but perhaps not all.
Sean, Zainab, Anaya, Sarah, they're all saying 3. Kiana's thinking of 4.
Okay. Any votes for 1 or 2?
Looks like no for 1 or 2.
Okay. Mostly for number 3 and a few for number 4?
Yes.
Okay. Anyone else want to weigh in before we discuss each of these sentences? Okay, guys, very good. Actually, you could write any of these 4 and describe this picture, but let's talk about each of them individually. First of all, ran and caught are very, very basic verbs, right? We know what it means to run. We know what it means to catch something. So although those are perfectly descriptive words for this picture, they don't really invoke a lot of power in each of them. The next one, my cat quickly ran across the field and skillfully caught a mouse. We are now using adverbs to describe verbs. So you have used an extra word to describe a basic verb from the first sentence. Quickly ran. I suppose it's possible for a cat to run slow. Frankly, I've never seen it. So quickly probably doesn't add anything. Skillfully caught. Well, I think if you catch a mouse, you definitely have to have skills. So it's probably not necessary to say skillfully caught. Again, a useless adverb describing a verb because it simply doesn't add anything. Have you ever seen an unskillful cat catch a mouse? And number 4, and we'll go back to number 3 in a moment. Number 4 begins in the passive tense. Instead of saying the mouse caught, or the cat caught the mouse, let's turn it around here. The mouse was fiercely captured. Again, do you really need to say it in the past tense? It loses its action right there. And then finally, ran at a very quick rate. How about ran quickly? And you will find when you submit essays to me, I'm going to cut a lot of your words because we all have the tendency to want to say everything we have to say in writing in as many words as possible. So number 4 has a couple of issues, although it is infinitely better than the first 2. Number 3 is absolutely the most descriptive of this picture. Darting. I can see a cat darting in and out of trees and things, trying to hide itself. So I'm getting a real picture of this cat running. And then pouncing on the mouse. I could see that too, because that's what cats do at their prey. They pounce right upon it and then disable it. So I am getting a very vivid picture of what's going on in this very simple sentence by number 3. Any questions about these before we move on, or why number 3 is my personal favorite? Okay, notice they use fewer words. Fewer is sometimes better. Yes.
Rachel, Diana,
Yes.
that 3 is more concise than 4.
I'm sorry? You broke
Rachel,
up.
would you say 3 is more concise than 4?
I actually prefer 3 because it is more active than 4, because was fiercely captured. You could say fiercely captured, not was. The cat fiercely captured the mouse and ran at a very quick rate. I would immediately cross that out and say ran quickly, or ask you to choose darted instead, or a more active verb.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And that's all for the questions.
Okay, let's move on.
Okay.
I want to share with you a real life example of a Phoenix Union High School student who attended a week-long workshop on essays this past month in June. This student had no prior real practice at writing an essay, but took to heart the things that we told her and wrote the beginning and mid section of an essay. This is a first try. And so I want you not to read it. You probably already started, but we're going to read it to you. And I want you just to look away, close your eyes for a moment, and envision that you are hearing someone reading you this story. And I will ask Meryl if you can read the first screen, please.
Sure. I was the straw that broke the camel's back. I had never been to San Diego, so when my cousin offered to take me, I jumped at the chance. It was a long 5-hour drive in a cramped car, but at the time I believed it was worth it. I had never been to the beach, never stuck my toes into the warm, dry sand, or felt the wind beneath my metaphorical sails. But as I stepped out of that car for the first time in 5 hours, I was able to not only feel and hear the breeze brush against me, but taste the salty sea air as it caressed my face. I was able to reach down and feel every grain of sand beneath me, tickling my senses. In that moment, the world felt as though it were mine, an oyster waiting to be claimed. If only this serenity had lasted. My then aunt was an interesting person, borderline psychotic, if I'm being honest, but I never thought much of it before I experienced it firsthand. My only salvation was my cousin, a blinding light I couldn't help but follow in the darkness that was her mother. With my cousin by my side, I was mostly able to forget her and enjoy the trip. It wasn't until the end when we were enjoying SeaWorld that she struck.
Thank you, Meryl. I did see a question come in about whether an essay should be written in the active or passive tense. Although I think you can get away with both, I think it is always going to read better and more powerfully if you are speaking in the active tense. I also have students sometimes talk about whether you should tell your story in the first person or the third person. Quite frankly, third person's really interesting when you're talking about yourself, as if you are looking at yourself from the outside. It is a harder essay to write. You want, if you're telling the essay in the first person, just to avoid starting every sentence with I. Now let's look at this essay. And I'm going to ask you, after we read the second screen, to give me some thoughts about it, but I want to call your attention to the highlighted areas here. I was the straw that broke the camel's back. That is a perfect example of a cliche. Whether you've ever heard it or not, I can assure you lots of people say it, they don't even know what it means. But this student has chosen to draw me in with this cliche. Now you'll notice in the next 2 paragraphs, she doesn't really get back to that. Her second paragraph is a very vivid description of a car ride and going to the beach. It's all lovely, serene. I feel myself on the beach with her because she uses words that make me think about the ocean, the sand, the wind, also the 5 hours in the cramped car. If you've ever been to San Diego, you probably felt that. But you'll notice that the last sentence of the second paragraph this essay is about to take a turn. If only that serenity had lasted. So as the reader, I immediately want to read more because I'm like, what happened here? Then she begins in the third paragraph to describe a person who is bound to have an effect on her life. This is an excellent description of someone she obviously had issues with. She describes her then aunt, and notice she said then aunt, and we'll get back to that in a moment, who was borderline psychotic, according to the student, was her cousin's mother, and she loved her cousin. And you'll notice I also highlighted her capitalization of pronouns. This is a very effective tool in this essay because I am getting the impression that this aunt, whatever lady she is, actually has some power over this student. She even uses her and she in a capitalization. So I'm thinking, wow, this is a really powerful woman and she's exerting some kind of influence over this girl. What is it? So that's why I highlighted these parts of the first page for you. Opens with a cliche. I want to know how she's going to use it. She takes a turn in the second paragraph, so I want to keep reading. And in the third paragraph, she assigns a very, very vivid description to this woman. You know, I'm looking at this third paragraph and I'm thinking Wicked Witch of the West here. And so let's move on to the second part of this essay. We are not going to read the entire end, but this is what happened next. And Megan, may I ask you to read this, please?
Diana. My uncle is clearly a very tolerant and generous person. We were in the gift shop when he realized my mom forgot to give me money for souvenirs, so he announced that we get anything below $20. Once he said that, I beelined past the snow globes and stuffed orcas and straight towards a violently peaked stuffed dolphin. It was like my world was complete when I grasped its feather-soft skin and held it to my chest, until it was snatched from my hands. I whispered around and saw the devil herself holding it above me, and then the terror set in. It was at that moment, as she burned her evil gaze into my memory, I realized that I was terribly afraid of her, frozen like a statue, cracking under her pressure. And as I could do nothing, as she shouted, "Who said you could take this? Are you stealing? It's your mother's fault for not giving you money. This means you don't get anything." That was the straw that broke the camel's back.
Thank you, Megan. I especially liked how Megan read the quote that I've highlighted. This student obviously has a lot of recollection of this event, not necessarily positive recollection at this point, but she uses the aunt's words in direct quotation. I can hear this woman saying that to her, and I can feel bad for this child holding something that their uncle offered to buy for them, and obviously considering it important. Have you ever had a souvenir you just couldn't live without and you had to have it? Notice she also says, "my mom." I love that because it makes her mom seem more human to me because she's using what she calls her, my mom. Notice that I've highlighted also, until it was snatched from my hands. I want you to realize, and I'm sure you all do, this is not a complete sentence. Do I, as the reader, think, oh my gosh, this student doesn't know how to write because there's an incomplete sentence. I'll have to mark off for that or not consider her for that. That is not what I think at all. I think obviously the student knows how to write because everything else is a complete sentence, but I know she did this for effect. It's a partial sentence. Again, you can use something like that if you really want to hammer a point home. And until it was snatched from my hands is her way of saying this is about to get real. So I want you to know these were the parts of this essay I liked the most. Notice that it comes back to that was the straw that broke the camel's back. And all this, although the student did not get to the end of this essay in the time we spent together, we talked a lot about how she could take this one very uninteresting common event and turn it into a life lesson. And you're about to see that on the next page. All right, how's this story going to end anyway? This is what the student told me she's working on as her ending. The essay's going to end with the writer's uncle divorcing her aunt. Remember, she said then aunt? He divorced the woman, and he pointed to that incident in the gift shop as the straw that broke the camel's back. In other words, she'd been like this during their entire marriage, and just seeing her interact this way with one of their relatives made him realize that she really was probably borderline psychotic. So what is the point for this student? Bad thing happened to me on the way to SeaWorld. Okay, it's more than that. The writer told me that she felt somehow responsible at first, but later she reflected on the experience and she realizes she was not the straw that broke the camel's back. It was a history of being an abusive and unpleasant woman that drove her uncle to divorce her aunt. The writer has also taken that incident to heart and has chosen that forevermore, she hopes to be more careful with her words and actions so she doesn't inflict hurt on someone like her aunt inflicted on her. And then finally, this lesson is really pretty simple. Somebody did something bad and inexcusable to you. It was a little thing, but it signaled a bigger problem with that person. And this student learned some valuable lessons from vividly recalling what was going on and describing that single event. So with that being said, this student is going to take these life lessons and the point here and write the ending of her essay in probably a pretty short paragraph because she's already used a lot of words. But if she just ended it without talking about what it meant to her and what she learned, there'd be no point, right? So I hope you see where she's going with this. And I'd be interested if you've got a couple of words in reaction to what she wrote. If you can share those with us, please. And then I will finish with my own thoughts about it. Anybody think this is really good, really bad, really dumb, really smart? Okay, we get a very strong, I would agree with that. Anybody else like what she did here or bothered by it?
Diana says
Yeah.
she liked the descriptive disagree.
Excuse me?
Sarah says she likes the descriptive disagree.
Yes. Even the violently pink dolphin, I don't think I've ever heard anyone say violent and pink in the same sentence, but that's kind of cool to me. I'll tell you what my first reaction was when I read it. I had to go back and read it again because my first reaction was, wow, there is a lot of stuff going on here. Is she being too flowery? Is she being too descriptive? And then I went back and read it again and I absolutely loved what she did. But you have to be careful and that you don't want to be so descriptive and flowery that you say absolutely nothing. But like I said, she has a point she's making here and she's getting to it. Any more comments, Megan?
No, that's
Okay. Let's move on then in the interest of time. You always want to present your best self. That means you may have to stay away from controversial topics. Typically, religion and politics are two of the most controversial topics. And the reason that you want to stay away from them or be very careful with them is your readers may have a completely different life view than you have. And although we all say we're objective when we're looking at students' work, there's going to be a little bit of judgment that enters into our subconscious about topics that are that close to us right now and that can be controversial. If the prompt, however, asks you to define your worldview or explain why your generation is misunderstood or whatever it may ask, you're going to have to answer that. So you'll want to do it in a passionate, objective way without really blaming the other side or calling out the other side of the argument. So you want to present yourself in a debate situation by coming around to an understanding of that there may be opposite opinions of yourself. And you need to edit and revise everything. This young lady's essay that you just saw was a first draft. The final draft, if she chooses to use this essay, is going to look probably somewhat different, although she did a great job on the first draft. Very few of us can do a final draft and first draft at the same time. So have people read it. Teachers, siblings, counselors, College Depot. As I said, you can email me your essay, say, look at it. I'll call you back or contact you, give you my honest assessment of it. And if you want to have an appointment, we can talk about it. Even in this virtual world, we do tons of phone appointments. So have someone look at it. The closer the person is to you, the less objective they're going to be. So I used to think everything my children wrote was perfect, and I had trouble analyzing that it wasn't, but they had an English professor father, so he took that role from me. You want people to help catch your errors, because there's nothing worse than an essay full of typos in unintentional partial sentences and misused words that you had to look up in a thesaurus. Don't do that. We'll stop you from that. Finally, what do you want to avoid? I'm going to tell you nothing, because of the length of time I've been doing this. There are some topics you want to be careful of, if not outright avoid. Controversy, particularly religion and politics. Illegal activity, because it's really hard not to take a side on that one. You know, either pro law enforcement or pro family or friend. So it's really difficult to talk about that objectively. Sports are difficult for you because you have to go beyond I scored the winning goal and I felt good at the party. It has to be how you learned about teamwork or managing stress or not always winning. Those are valuable life lessons. My daughter played chess for 10 years from the time she was 10 to 20 and lost about 5,000 games. And they tell you have to lose that many in order to get good. She finally did, but again, sports are difficult to talk about. Tragedies, because unless something great came out of a death of a family member, or it's hard to think of anything great coming out of that, it's going to probably have a negative tilt to it. Divorce is another of those topics. It's pretty common these days. Separation and divorce are unfortunate occurrences in some families. And so if you're going to talk about it, you want to talk about something different about it, other than just, I felt bad when I had to start living in two households. And pets, same thing. We all love fluffy kittens and puppies, even when they pounce on mice. But the fact is, they are sometimes hard to talk about objectively also. And then finally, mission trips. We're venturing into the area of religion here. But if a mission trip resulted in a significant cultural experience or revelation to you, don't shy away from it. And finally, to close today, I want to call your attention, all of you who are in high school, to something you can do right now. You can practice and apply for a $1,000 scholarship all at the same time. Pinnacle Auto Glass is a local Phoenix area auto glass replacement company, and they want to know, why do you believe local businesses are important? They happen to be one. They want to know what you think. And this essay is due August 31st. It's a very simple application. You have to write an essay of up to 1,000 words, and that sounds like a lot, but you'll be surprised at how quickly they go. And there are several bullet points here that give you approaches to this essay. Do you want to talk about why your favorite restaurant in your neighborhood is your favorite restaurant? Because they know your name, they know your order, they always say hi. They're always happy to see you. I have one of those up the street. Do you have a business idea if you don't have a good local restaurant in your neighborhood? This is particularly good for those of you who are business majors. If you want to Okay, I'm reading. I'm sorry. I got off track. I was reading the chat. If you want to write an essay that speaks to some of these things, this is a local scholarship. So you stand a better chance of qualifying for it than a national scholarship. You also need only to Google Pinnacle Auto Glass Scholarship and it'll just take you right to the page. I recommend that you look at the page because it has both the winning essays from 2019 and 2018. So you can see what they were looking for and what won. I love this scholarship because the 2018 winner is one of my students. And when I first read the essay, I didn't realize who it was from. And I thought, I've read this before. I've looked at it. I helped her correct a couple of things about it and she won. So we are kind of happy about that at College Depot. Great essay to start with though, if you're going to start writing. And I know we had some questions. Megan, would you catch me up, please? I think we're near the end of this.
Thank you. It's asking matters more the technicality of the essay or how the essay makes the reader feel.
Can you repeat it? You're cutting in and out for me.
Yes, Diane is asking what matters more, the technicality of the essay or how the essay makes the reader feel? Are there exceptions to one or the other?
Excellent question. I have a tendency to correct your grammar if I'm reviewing, but I also spend most of my time on content. And quite honestly, if I'm reading an essay, not reviewing it, but reading the final draft of it, I pay much more attention to the content than I do small grammatical errors. On the other hand, if the essay is completely filled with misspelled words, misused words, incomplete sentences, comma splices, you name it, I'm an English major. I'm going to be influenced by that. But if you have one problem or two problems in the essay, nobody's perfect. I will look more for content than I will for grammar. And I think that's true of most. They recognize you're a high school student. You're not perfect yet. You have to go to college for that.
Okay, thank you. But it's asking, can you see the link? This is for a 10-year-old.
A link to what, Megan? I'm sorry.
He's sending the link to the Pinnacle Auto Glass Scholarship.
Oh, yes, I can. Although I don't think a 10-year-old could actually get it. I believe it's reserved for juniors and seniors. But you know, it's something great to practice on. And this presentation will be on YouTube. So the link is right at the bottom.
Okay, thank you, Diana.
Any other questions before we close?
Someone's asking if they join the next meeting about scholarship.
Yes. In fact, I am moving over to the financial aid and scholarship session with Bianca Ramirez, who will be co-presenting with me. If you just stay on the line, I believe, Megan, we're going to transfer right over there.
Exactly.
And you will hear a little bit more about essay writing for scholarships in that session. So if we repeat ourselves for you, there's lots more content there as well.
Okay.
And with that, I really want to thank all of you for being with us today. I want to turn it back to Megan in the interest of time. But please let us know if you have questions, comments, you need anything at all to be reviewed. We're happy to do it.
Thank you, Diana. Okay, thank you for this event. We really appreciate all of your participation. Just want to let you know we offer a free one-on-one appointments for 45 minutes where you can get help with any of the essay essentials tools that we talked about today, or scholarships or financial aid or the FAFSA or anything like that. You can request a virtual appointment at tiny.cc/CD request. You can also call our office at 602-261-8847, 602-261-8847. And if you're interested in staying on, we are doing a scholarship and financial aid right after this from 2 to 3:30 today. We encourage you to just stay on the call. We also have test prep essentials the following Saturday, the 25th, from 10 to 11:30 a.m. where you'll learn all about how to manage test taking stress, study for all those exams that you have in school and prior to starting to school. So we're excited for you to stay on. You'll also get a recording of this event. I will send it out to you from Megan Meyerson following this for all of those that you want to share with your friends and family members. So we look forward to seeing you. For scholarships, please stay on. Thank you again for participating. Again, this is our first ever virtual summer sessions this summer. So we appreciate all of your patience as we navigate these times. Thank you again. And just stay on for the next scholarship financial aid will begin shortly.